Hello and welcome to the Autonomous Customer 2020. It's the 10th anniversary of our research this year. We started back in 2010 with 2 countries, 500 customers per country, taking the temperature of their attitudes around customer experience and channel choices. And every other year we've asked them the same questions. And this year is a bumper edition. We've actually covered 12 countries, again 500 customers per country, and asked them lots of questions around channel choice and customer experience. So what have we found? This is the key to the autonomous customer. The first dilemma is that we are seeing customers have a really high expectation still of customer experience, and actually having an appetite to embrace digital customer experiences primarily because it puts them in control. Does that mean they use digital channels? Well, they will if it makes life easier for them. And I think easy is one of those dominant things. It's been dominant in the research for the past couple of iterations. Does this make customers' lives easier? And the answer on the digital side is maybe not, because only 21% of our global customers are rating the digital experience as easy. So maybe we're not bringing customers along with us on the digital transformation path. Maybe they're not finding digital tools as easy as they should. Maybe they've been deployed in the wrong way. And of course, we then have a myriad of choices in terms of channels. And obviously, the more channels you add, the more complexity you have in organisations. And all of this is creating some rather interesting trends. So the first trend in the autonomous customer 2020, well, it's a surprising one, to be honest. And I always say with this research, there's always a couple of big surprises. This one was maybe counterintuitive to some of the data we've been seeing previously, in that a lot of people had been predicting the death of the phone. Actually, it's definitely not dead. In fact, it is the #1 channel across the board, including with those millennials who apparently never use the phone, but are, from the data, the biggest users. So what is going on? Why is the phone growing? Well, the first thing is that the digital channels are maybe driving people to the phone because sometimes they are failing. And I think this is the trend that we're seeing around the millennials. They're starting on digital. They're trying to do stuff on digital because they like it. It's in control. They're in control. But when things go horribly wrong, they're escalating it to the phone. So that's the first thing. I think the phone is picking up a lot of cost of failure demand from other digital channels. The second thing is it's still very good at handling things like complexity and emotive stuff. So that's not going away. So again, that has a ripple back effect on things like the skills on your agents, actually enabling them to have the knowledge and empowerment to deal with complex and emotive stuff. But the other interesting trend that may impact into the future is AI and voice, and particularly things like chatbots. So if we look at things like Alexa, for example, if someone starts an interaction on Alexa and maybe Alexa can't answer, it's highly likely that customers are going, well, ring the contact centre. So it is potentially possible that we're going to see a further increase in demand if people are starting on a voice channel, whether it's a voice assistant. Why would they switch to another channel? So we could see an increase of the phone again into the future. So the first message really is, don't forget the phone. It's a really important channel in the channel mix, and that isn't going to go away. The #2 trend is around messaging mania. Now, in the previous iteration of the research, we saw a massive hike in people's preferences to message organisations, whether it's through things like email, which has always stood up, or maybe newer channels like WhatsApp. So we're still seeing a trend towards messaging, but it's not growing this year as much as it did in previous years. And I think, again, we're seeing maybe a little bit of disillusionment in the space, particularly with things like synchronous messaging, things like web chats. Now, certainly I've had some experiences on web chat which weren't optimal, which weren't that easy, mainly because often we are scheduling concurrent sessions into the agents. So maybe agents are dealing with 1, 2, 3 simultaneous conversations. And I think customers are noticing that because it makes for a very stilted conversation. And sometimes those conversations are cut off mid-flow. So again, the experience isn't necessarily there. But I think the good news with messaging is there are a lot of pointers towards customers liking it. It's digital first. It's easy. It puts them in control. They have a record of the interaction. So I think messaging is still very important. The third trend, well, there are things that we definitely got wrong in previous years. And to be honest, the trajectory on social media did start to stall 2 iterations of the research. Now, there are some ifs and buts around social media. I think we're finding that it's very good for things like branding and brand awareness. It's good for sales, but for service, it's not so good. Now, there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, it's a very public channel. So I think customers are aware that their friends are seeing this conversation for a start. So if they're moaning about something, all of their friends know that they're moaning about it. On the corporate side, I think it is a brave company that plays everything out in public, and social media, as a result, tends to be a classic channel shift channel. So in other words, you're picked up on social media and then you'll move to a more private channel, whether that's chat, whether that's the phone, whether that's email. That's just a strategic decision. But social media certainly has stalled in terms of its growth. Another channel we were kind of wrong about, maybe, is video. Now, video actually is not becoming a mass consumer channel, although we're using it with each other more. Things like Skype and FaceTime, we're using it with our friends, but are we then translating that behaviour to using it with corporates? And I think generally the answer is no. Apart from some niche areas where video is actually delivering an easy and better customer experience. And those areas are things like healthcare, things like expert advice, things like product demonstrations, where there's a visual aspect to the activity. So I think we can kind of drill into certain areas where video really does add an advantage, but as a mass channel, it's probably not there yet. The next trend is about trust and security. And certainly this is again one that's been the past couple of iterations of the research. Trust and security has come out really high in customers' perceptions. Not a surprise, really. We've got a lot of hack attacks going on. We've got a lot of things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where consumers started to wonder how their data was being used. Now, the trouble, of course, with secure transactions is the more secure you make something, frequently the less easy it is. And that's always a dilemma. But the good news is that innovations like biometrics, which frankly have been around for so many years, are starting to be adopted by consumers, partially because it's come right down onto their devices, so we get used to things like fingerprint recognition, but things like voice print recognition as well. That means that we can kind of use, stuff that we use every day, whether it's our voice or a bit of our body, to say, hello, it's me. And that makes things both easy and secure. Our final trend, I think, is one of the most fascinating ones, and this is where things like AI start to come in. So we've had AI in terms of things like chatbots and things like that, maybe have not quite been delivering brilliant customer experience, but all the time AI has been working in the background to do other things for us. So the first thing is around personalisation. Now, we're very comfortable with personalisation. Amazon use it, certainly Netflix use it as well. And that's all about learning about me, giving you my data so that it makes it much, much easier for me to make choices because those choices are personalised to me. But this does not work by magic. It does work by data, which is why I call this trend the me economy, because this is about me as a customer, allowing you to have my data in order to create easier and better customer experiences. But it starts with personalisation. The next step, of course, is once I've learnt about the customer, is how do I become more proactive? And this is a really interesting area. So in other words, I need to tell the customer what they need to know before they have to tell me. So in some senses, this is managing demand outwards rather than inwards. And customers are gradually getting more and more buy-in for things like proactive contact, as long as it is appropriate, as long as it tells them things that they need to know, as long as it's in the right channel for them and it's timely. I think this is a big one for the future. Again, this is all about data. We can use AI and algorithms to maybe even become predictive and start to do things that the customer never even thought they knew they wanted to do until we tell them about it. But that can get a bit creepy. But because this is all about data and customer data, it's all about customer permission. And I think it gets really fascinating as a trend as we get into things like the Internet of Things and smart everything, where there's a lot more data about me out there. All of my devices are effectively talking about me behind my back. But if I don't see an advantage to that, if I don't see better personalization, better proactivity, and potentially appropriate predictiveness, I'm not going to let you have my data. But I think this is a big trend for the future, and it's certainly one that's growing in terms of the trends for the autonomous customer. So that was the Autonomous Customer 2020, just a flavour of some of the trends that we're seeing. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks a lot for listening.